Hello friends, my name is Emile and welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today we're taking a look at some A-Class cars and we kick things off with the 1987 Porsche 959. 450 horsepower, 369 foot-pound torque, 3,190 pounds of weight. One of the most influential supercars of all time. The closest thing to get to 200 miles per hour ever until the Ferrari F40 came along. The mighty Porsche 959. The Ferrari F40 was basically a stripped out go-kart, but the 959 was actually a rather technologically advanced piece of kit. Still, here in Forza Motorsport, it's never really been the best car in the world. While it has always been sort of the top A-Class car, and it is today, it is A700. The F40's always handled that a little bit better, been a little bit quicker, been that little bit better. Of course, the 959 does have the advantage of all-wheel drive. However, it does have a bit of a weird handling pattern, this one. It really likes to get its arse end out. I'm assuming because it's rear-engined. There's a lot of weight over the rear end, and the four-wheel drive system sort of... it can't really deal with it. The car sort of just slides its entire body round, and that does slow you down a fair bit. It's hard to explain. It's overall a good handle. It's a good car, and you could probably easily get rid of that sort of feature by removing some weight or something. But yeah, very odd feature that car had, and did affect the lap time. Next up, a car which is all about the lap time. 2009, a Lotus 211, 252 horsepower, 179 foot-pound of torque, 1,642 pounds of weight. Unsurprisingly, this is the least powerful car here today, the least torquey car here today, and the lightest. It is A681 in PI. Despite that though, we do have massive hopes for the Lotus 211. Every time this car has come to the Top Gear track, it has decimated it. This thing is just unbelievably quick around corners. You know, as much as I do prefer the way the KTM Expo drives, the Caterham is slightly quicker in a straight line and so on and so forth, the 211 just strikes that balance so perfectly, and it is a phenomenal car if you can get things right. It is very tricky, but once you've got the hang of it, it's amazing. I mean, coming through here onto the follow-through, this is doing 110 miles an hour through that corner, and I'm not even at the limits of its grip. It's insane. You can see through there just how quick it is. It doesn't have the most straight line speed in the world because it doesn't have much power, but because it can go around corners so quickly here at Top Gear, it can get a great run onto the straights, and that does give it an advantage. This is a really phenomenally quick car. I do recommend giving it a go, but you do need some pretty big cojones to take it on. Next up, 1997 Lamborghini Diablo SV, 530 horsepower, 446 foot-pound of torque, 3,474 pounds of weight. This is an A-Class car, 654 in PI. It is also the only car here today, I believe, that has pop-up headlights, which does give it some coolness points, I get. It also comes in purple, which is nice. Yeah, the Lamborghini Diablo. If you ask most people what their favourite Lamborghinis is, the Diablo is the one that does come up quite often. Never really been a huge fan of the Diablo. I do like it. My favourite's the VT, with the flat headlights and the all-wheel drive. That was sort of when the Audification was going on. But, yeah, I do like the Diablo. It is, out of all of the Lamborghini supercars, probably the least flamboyant looking of them all. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. The Diablo, as far as it drives, it is decent. It is decent. It feels heavy, though. That's really weird to say, because it only weighs about 3,400 pounds, that's not a lot, but the steering feels heavy. It's quite hard to get the front end of the car round a corner. Yeah, it just feels super heavy. It is a bit dead feeling. It is, you know, a decent car to drive and all that, but yeah, handling wise, a little bit of an odd one. Certainly not what you'd expect. Next up, 2015 Mercedes-AMG GTS, 503 horsepower, 479 foot-pound torque, 3,627 pounds of weight. This is the most modern car here today. A652 is the PI on this one. Never really been a huge fan of the AMG GTS. Of course, this was the car that technically replaced the SLS, as much as Mercedes would like you not to think that. That is basically what this car did. Never really been a huge fan of it. I don't think it looks particularly good. I think it's sort of signifying AMG's more sensible side, which is not something I particularly enjoy about AMG. But, you know, a lot of people like this car. It does make a fantastic noise, I'll give it that. As far as this goes, it is a pretty decent all-rounder. You know, it isn't the most precise car in the world, it isn't the quickest car in the world, but it is a pretty neutral handling car. It kind of reminds me of the 1 Series M in that aspect, I guess. It's not quite as good at handling as that 1 Series M was, but yeah, it is sort of very similar in the sense that it's an easy car to drive. It's pretty straightforward. It doesn't really do anything that you wouldn't expect a car to do. You know, it doesn't really oversteer or understeer horrifically. It's just not the quickest thing in the world. But yeah, if you want sort of a car you can drive a pretty carefree, the GTS isn't a bad choice. Next up, 2005 Ford GT, 550 horsepower, 500 foot-pound of torque, 3,390 pounds of weight. This has the most torque here today. It's actually tied for most torque. We'll get to that later on. Goss 2005 Ford GT, a car which is currently skyrocketing in value. Never really been a huge fan of the 05 GT. Looks-wise, it's never really appealed to me. It always came across as a bit of a nostalgia act. Admittedly, again, sort of like the AMG GTS, it sounds fantastic. In fact, I'd say this sounds even more fantastic because I love a good supercharger whine. And this thing, all you hear in this car is basically supercharger. It's pretty great in that respect. But yeah, the GT, kind of similar to the Diablo, I guess, in sort of an older supercar. Driving-wise, it is, again, it is sort of similar to the Diablo in the way it drives. It is really quite decent. It does feel a little bit on the heavy side. Surprisingly, it is actually lighter than the Diablo. Wasn't really expecting that. Doesn't feel as heavy as the Diablo. It isn't quite as hard to get turned into corners as the Diablo, but it does feel heavier compared to its contemporaries from the likes of Ferrari and so on and so forth. But, you know, it is still a fine car to drive. I personally would probably take a 430 Scuderia or something like that over the GT, but it's not bad. Next up, 2013 Aston Martin V12 Vantage S, 565 horsepower, 457 foot-pound of torque, 3,671 pounds of weight. This is the most powerful car here today, which is quite ironic when you consider it's one of the smallest dimensionally. The Lotus is probably the only one that has it beat dimension-wise. Yeah, the V12 Vantage, the S is a bit of a hard car to look at, I find. I don't really like the sort of carbon fibre lipstick it's got going on. It's not my thing. But it's not a bad car. I do prefer the GT12 in the way it looks, and I do prefer the original V8 Vantage in the way they look. But, you know, the Vantage is a good looking car either way, and it's a pretty cool car either way. The Vantage, it's kind of a hard one to explain, this one, because, honestly, it's a fine car to drive. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's nowhere near as good as it was in Horizon 2. But every motorsport game I play, this car seems to get worse and worse. And in this game, to be honest with you, my main criticism of it is it's got too much power. 565 horsepower through this small of a body shell, it doesn't work. It just, for whatever reason in this car, and it's the first time I've felt this about the V12 Vantage, just doesn't work. It's just got too much power. I feel this car could be better if it just had 400 horsepower. That would make it a much better car to drive. Next up, 2013 BMW M6, 560 horsepower, 500 foot-pound of torque, 4,255 pounds of weight, the heaviest car here today. And like with the Ford GT, this one is tied for highest torque. It's also not too far off being the most powerful here today. So statistically, the M6 is not bad. BMW M6, not really a huge fan. I know I'm saying that a lot today, but yeah, the BMWs don't really appeal to me, and the M6 is one I sort of struggle with. I'd much rather just have an M5 over an M6. And the unfortunate thing is, this is, I'd say, by far and away the worst car here to drive today. It's not a good car to drive at all. You know, last time I drove this in Motorsport 6, I didn't find it too bad, but driving it again now, yeah, I didn't like it. It has a pretty real issue with random snap oversteer. That's sort of what this car's game is. That's what it likes to do. Combine that with the heavy weight, yeah, just not a very good car to drive. If you ask me, I would much rather go with the older M6 with the V10 engine. I believe it's slightly lighter, but it also crucially runs a bit less power. And I think it avoids some of the weird handling quirks. I'll have to drive it stock, but yeah, the M6, I really would not recommend driving that car. And finally today, the 1963 Ferrari 250 LM, 300 horsepower, 231 foot-pound torque, 2,094 pounds of weight. It is a 605 in PI, meaning it is the lowest A-class car here today. Not the lowest A-class car in the game, but it's not too far off. I believe the lowest is a 602, although I couldn't tell you what PI that car belongs to. I also forgot to read the PI for the last few cars, but it doesn't really matter. They're sort of in between. Yeah. 250LM, a car which came in Forza Motorsport 6. Can't say I really have too much affinity for this car. Don't really know what it's all about. I assume it raced at Le Mans at some point. Don't really know too much about this car. However, I do know quite a bit about the way it drives, and I can tell you straight from the heart this thing has the worst gearbox I have ever driven. It has 5 speeds. You use 2 of them. First gear goes all the way up to about 90 miles per hour, and second gear tops out about 130. So, yeah, you don't need any of the other gears around this track. Other than that, it does drive very similar to the Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale of last week, unsurprisingly. I would say the 33 is a better handling car, and also it has the better gearbox, and yeah, the LM, just not a very good car. I'm sure if you upgraded it, you could make this thing ridiculously quick, but yeah, as far as it stands from stock, not hugely exciting. Onto the leaderboard, the Lotus 211 is the fastest car today, which doesn't really surprise me, but might surprise some of you. Goes in second with a 1:16.689, completely decimates the Ferrari FF, which is one of the cars we used as a benchmark. Moving down some more, in 4th place, the Lamborghini Diablo SV with a 1:18.459. Quite interesting, the second car here today is actually quite far down on PI. It's only midway through A-Class, but it beats the Porsche 959 with a 1:18.471. Only beats it just, but the 959's handling did let it down. Then we come on to the conglomerate of most of the other A-Class cars. Mercedes-AMG GTS goes into 6th with a 1:19.321. Ford GT05 goes in 7th with a 1:19.439. And the Aston Martin V12 Vantage S goes into 8th with a 1:19.518, all beating the Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale. They're all basically in PI order as well, ironically. The GT is A640, the V12 Vantage is A638. Moving down the board some more, the BMW M6 goes into 11th place with 120.562, losing out to the 288 GTO and the Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale. Unsurprisingly, the handling of that car is just plain bad. It is also the second lowest PI car here today, A619. And finally, in 12th place, the Ferrari 250LM, a 121.109. It is way over a second off on the Alfa Romeo 33 Stradale, which is quite surprising considering it's a higher PI car, but yeah. That gearbox really lets the 250LM down, which is a bit of a shame. Anyways, friends, thank you all very much for watching this episode of Forza Top Gear Laps. Next time, we're going to be doing the final class-based episode where I'm going to be taking a look at some S-Class cars, so join us for that. Until next time, friends, thank you all very much for watching, and farewell.